Aloha, everybody. Welcome back to Optimize Your Now podcast. We're having an amazing conversation with Dr. Kelly and Juliet Starrett. We're talking about family. We're talking about raising kids, the importance of movement, the importance of giving up control and living life, but to the best of our ability. And the importance that we are just doing our best. They're going to talk about some of their resources and their knowledge of just some of the daily habits that we all can incorporate in our everyday life and into our families for a healthy, happy life.
Tune in and enjoy. Optimize Your Now podcast is produced by us here at Naopono Wellness and edited by Jaren Kobashigawa of Tangible Memories. Subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram to discover more stories about healing connections and health innovations. Aloha. Aloha, everybody. Welcome to Optimize Your Now podcast. Today we have very special guests joining us here, Dr. Kelly and Juliet Starrett, husband-wife team that co-founded the Ready State, coaching platform dedicated to mobility as well as longevity, and also co-authored the New York Times bestseller, Built to Move, actually, yeah? And as well as all of these here that we have, practical guide of simple and accessible daily habits for everyday people, not just athletes. That's what you have to look forward to with this new book. Well, actually the bestseller, Built to Move, but also looking forward to some other projects coming up, right?
Yeah, and so welcome to Hawaii. Welcome to our place. Yeah.
Delighted to be here.
Yes, I've never met you folks in person. He's always gone, and met you folks up in the mainland, and so excited to have you folks here in person to give you a hug and and touch you, and it's so amazing how watching your books evolve, watching your podcasts evolve, your stories evolve, and I know you folks are parents, right? And we're parents too. So I would like to dive into some of that too. We're going to get some.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I blacked out for the last 18 years with my children.
Some expert advice to us,
But what's nice, one of the things that I really enjoyed about connecting with you folks back then was just, it was very comforting to know that I wasn't making up things in my own head, that there's other people that were thinking the same way. A lot of the things that you guys were saying were the same things that went on in my head, that I was sharing with my clients and my patients. And it was just so comforting to know that other people are doing the same thing, if another physical therapist is doing the same or and promoting the self-help type of approach, right? We got to take care of ourselves. We got to learn how to, or teach our population of, individuals out there on how to manage their own, at least to some extent, right?
Begin a conversation there. I think when you come out of any classic institution, it's important that we level up and we create sort of a base understanding, a foundation, but then you go take that into the world and say, hey, does this sort of classic institutional model really serve our families? Does it serve communities as well as it could? Because it does, right? It exists for a reason. But when you start asking those questions and you're saying, hey, I think we can take a different approach and we can think differently about the problem, then it really opens up for what's possible. And at the time when we started this, the internet was brand new. I mean, really honest. I know the internet's been around for a second, but YouTube was brand new. I mean, our coaches used to laugh. They would say, hey, why are you guys on Yahoo Business? And we're like, because Google didn't exist when we opened this gym. We started making content. The iPhone did not have a video camera. You couldn't upload. So we were filming and downloading and uploading. We were on Blogger. And our radical idea, and it was a radical idea at the time, I think it's subversive, was that we just said, hey, we think all this is unskilled. And you don't need to talk to a professional person to know that you're missing hip extension or your quads are stiff or how to get out of pain. And we just decided, hey, let's go ahead and shift that over. It wasn't initially even about some altruistic vision or democratization. It was because we were working in our gym, and we had so many people had so many issues that were coming up as a model of, the strength conditioning is also the diagnostic tool, is also the stimulus for change, but also the way in to understand what's happening. And so we were just uncovering everyone's dirty laundry, all of it. Oh, you hurt your knee back in high school? Yeah, well, we're going to find that out. Like, you don't have any, your ankle gets a little hot when okay, we're going to find that out. You don't have skills. And so we set out to just say, hey, let's see if we can get some of this covered before we get to have the conversation. Because I'll tell you, as a clinician, sometimes it's, I'm like, why are you here? This is not a problem for a skilled professional. Like, you should have handled your
fancy.
I am fancy and funny. And the idea was the idea was like, hey, I think this actually would be better served. You could serve yourself individually at home, and then we could get to the real conversation. And then that snowballed into a really radical idea of how do we look at where people are getting their health information, and how do we up level those people in the way that, maybe speaks or is adjunctive to or addition to what they're traditionally doing.
When you said that at the beginning, what that made me think was how lonely and isolating running a business can be, and how there's a lot to hate about the internet and all of the things that come with social media, but it's also connected so many of us in ways that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise be connected, right? Like, you would just be here running your clinic and we would be doing our thing, and we probably never would have maybe we would have met at a conference or something, but it is, I do think when you have those moments as an entrepreneur where you have that feeling of like, okay, not only am I not alone doing this, but I'm finding my community of people who are thinking and approaching it the same way is like very, it's like a lovely thing to experience that as an entrepreneur, because I don't think we all get to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you were talking about the intention of, the education, because you were seeing so many of these things. And I feel like, we see that here too, and it's almost like they kind of don't want to say, they don't want to go against the grain, right? The patients, or they don't want to out the person who actually, gave them the wrong information, because it's so common. It's like, you're supposed to believe it. Right. And I feel like that in itself, kind of makes us going against the grain, puts us, in a weird position too, sometimes with, our patients, and even with other people who are looking for education. Right. But it's the intention. And that's what I really admire about you folks, the intention of why you started.
I appreciate that. And one of the things that I think happens sometimes is you start to ask a question and see it a different way. And suddenly you can find yourself in opposition, particularly because you start asking the next question. How do we move further upstream? Which is like what we the average person, bless their heart, I'm talking about you, is that you are an expert in your family and your job, and you have and you're managing so many stressors and taking care of things. And all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, by the way, you need to be an expert in your body, but you've had no training, no place to learn that. And what we see is that some of our institutions have not set us up. I'm not going to say failure, but it's a difficult task to, like, where do we teach kids how to eat and how to cook and how to self-soothe and move? And when something comes up, how do we create a schema for them to understand what to do first and then when to seek help? Because, I mean, there's no substitution for coming to see you all. There's like seeing an expert is seeing an expert, but we don't always have to initiate our medical emergency response around this. And ultimately, we want, health is a hyperlocal phenomenon, which means it needs to happen at the level of the household and the neighborhood and the community. And your providers should know some context about you. So one of the things we like to say is, like, who cuts your hair? Someone just random off the street? You just walk into a place and you're like,
definitely not.
Like, yeah, heck no.
Definitely
So
not.
the average person is like, I wouldn't let some random cut my hair. I'm like, so you're going to let a random take care of your body and your child's body and your knee? Like, they need to understand. That means we need to set up these relationships where people can know I go here because this person knows me, and I don't have to start from scratch every single time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think too, that trust factor becomes then a connection, right? And it's, I mean, there are people that connect with their doctors, right? And then there are people that connect with, their best friend, who might be you or him, right? But because, it's that mindset, I feel like, that gets people a little bit confused and messed up.
I think sometimes too, though, they feel intimidated with getting reconnected with their own self too. So as an example,
you're going to stumble on all the problems,
right?
Like your sleep, your stress. How do you
Absolutely.
cope? Like, what do you eat? How do you self-soothe? Like, we're about to get into it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you think this is about your back pain? Oh, that's
Oh,
cute.
yeah. That's right.
Yeah. No,
I mean, when you approach these areas that are very vulnerable, and we talked about this in regards to the diaphragm, right? And and smashing the gut, if you will. One of the most vulnerable places for all of us. Nobody really touches this space, right? Unless you get permission. But if you're creating an opportunity to connect with yourself at that moment, and what are you experiencing? Like, where do you feel this? And that question alone is a very deep one versus, looking at it very superficial on, okay, I'm feeling pain and pressure, right? And just like you were mentioning last night, I was like, man, I see it all the time when people are smashing their gut, for example. People are in tears sometimes. It's not an uncommon thing.
Because they're soft.
Yeah.
I would say Juliet and I are Gen Xers, and we had some success in college and graduate school and on the athletic field because we could dissociate and put our feelings away and not feel our feelings. Like we were masters of, like,
That's how
exactly how we're trained.
we'll just be like, we'll just put this door down
Yep.
and then do what needs to be done, and then we'll deal with our feelings later.
Yep.
And we had some childhood trauma, and those were really great coping strategies that
It worked. It
It
worked.
did.
It worked.
until it doesn't
Yeah.
work, and until we're asked to kind of pick those things back up and explore, because the answer can't always be more, and the answer can always be what's next. And one of our friends, Jill Miller, she says, hey, we're real good at going from 0 to 60, but we're not good at going from 60 to 0. And some of this means, hey, we really need to slow down and think about what's going on and be in touch with our bodies instead of just running it over with more volume and more caffeine. And I mean, that's fun. Wow. Until it doesn't work. That's right.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we experienced it, in our personal lives too. And yeah, going from 60 to 0 is not fun, especially when your body is manifesting that stress and that trauma in other ways, and you just so want to control it. You just got to do something different. Yeah,
That's right.
and look for a different source of information. Look for a different way of doing something. And sometimes it's really simple, but I think for a lot of people, it's you have to work at it, or it needs to hurt more, and that's just
the no pain, no gain, type of
and we got
mentality,
there by
right?
accident, right? Or we got there because these conversations are nuanced and tricky. And maybe it was 2013. Juliet was like, hey, Kelly, I think you should probably jump into some therapy and talk about how angry you are about your family. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I'm fine. She's like,
not angry.
I'm not angry. And I think a year of talking about my feelings, and now I have.
We like to joke that he now has one feeling.
But I feel this
And
thing
so
sometimes. This feeling comes up, and I'm like, what is that?
He does a lot of speaking on stage, and
Right.
he used, it really did serve him, his ability to sort of disassociate from his own nervousness. And he said, hey, now that I have a feeling, sometimes before I go and speak, I now feel nervous.
No, anxious.
Excuse me.
Okay.
And he's like, that's not a feeling that I'm used to feeling, and he sort of got in touch with his feelings, and he's like, wait, now I feel these feelings that I never used to feel because I just shut the door on them.
I cry in movies. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great having
He cries in rom-coms.
But it turns out it is the way forward. Sometimes it is to slow down and pause. And look, it works for most people that we don't have a template for having a schema. How do I put all these things together? How do I make time for my relationships? How do I make time for my body?
Right.
How do I restore? And what we do is we just work. And because it always works, then you're like, oh, it must be right. My way must be the right way. And, we like to think about some of these problems as complex systems. And when you take the human being and the brain, which is a very sophisticated structure and a very complex psycho-emotional environment, sometimes you can't see the outputs. You can't see the breakdown until it happens. And then you turn around, you're like, I don't get it. And it's, we say, it was obvious it was going to happen because you just gave the system enough time to express itself. and that comes up with, destroyed relationships, destroyed, pain, overriding, injury, trauma. You can just see that you're like, well, I don't understand. It always worked, because we haven't done a good job of saying this is what it takes. One of the things that I want to talk about in the studio is that we're all barefoot.
Yeah.
So you come into your clinic and you have to take your shoes off, and that makes you immediately feel like home. I have to feel connected. I have to feel, and it changes the vibe. We saw there's a great study in Norway that kids at Norway did better. And one of the things they did was just had to take their shoes off at the door, and kids ran around in their socks and immediately had better outcomes. So when we begin to think about these places where I can shift gears, because it can't just all be, totally in all the time.
That's right.
Right. Sometimes we need to be able to put the gas down, but we begin to start to think about safety versus non-safety, then we can make a lot of other decisions. We were interviewing this wonderful woman, Estima, and Dr. Estima, and she was Stephanie. And Dr. Steph was saying, she's like, hey, sometimes when we think about nutrition, we've told a generation of women you should be skinny, you should look a certain way.
It's all about restriction.
Right. And we've programmed through society and all the other things that's in a deeply messed up way, but being hungry and being underfueled is a signal of threat. And so inadvertently we put this threat signal into everything that we're doing, underlying everything. So when we begin to think differently about that, then suddenly you're like, wow, okay, we actually have additional capacity, and I can feel a little bit and maybe be a little happier.
Yeah. Well, we are in Hawaii, where majority of people, and I say majority, like almost everybody wears slippers, flip-flops.
Your favorite, by the way. Kelly's favorite, by the way.
Get ready, everybody. Get ready.
So we're doing it?
Let's
We're
do
ripping
it.
the Band-Aid off right now?
do it.
Yes.
Juliet, tell me real quick, why might a person not benefit from wearing a slipper?
Well, in order to keep the slipper on your foot, you have to be clenching your toes.
Can you sprint in slippers?
You can't really sprint. I mean, people have done it.
I was going to say.
And,
No, we don't. We take our slippers off. We put it on our hand.
and then you run like that.
And we run like this.
So you would just normally wear something on your feet that would make you slow and cumbersome as a choice. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I will tell you,
We're just doing a logic
Right,
experiment here.
when Kelly first realized this idea that he thought that flip-flops were terrible for you, he was much more extreme, and he softened, I would say, in his point of view of late.
That one
And
feeling
he does think
The
that
one
there's-
feeling.
kicked
his
in.
his one feeling kicked in, and he was like, you can wear your flip-flops from the car to the pool or from the car to the beach, but maybe it's not like an everyday shoe from a mechanics and movement perspective.
We were in Africa with our kids. It's weird that people in some of these countries, maybe like Kenya, maybe they've all chosen to make sandals with a back. Why would they do that? Because they have to run from lions, right?
Yeah.
Not run from the sun.
They don't have time to put their flip-flops
that's
on their
true.
hand and
That's
start
right.
running.
Right. So it is interesting. But what we can start to do though is it's a way of thinking, of saying, well, hey, what are all the inputs, or how do I shape the world so I don't have to think about something else, right? So this convenience, slipper is very convenient and inexpensive, right? And if I'm a very poor kid, then a slipper gives me access to places where I couldn't be barefoot. Totally valid, right? But when it ends up being a choice, sometimes we don't think how it might be altering us in the background because we're so adaptable. And then suddenly you can apply that to TV, you can apply that to ultra processed foods, you can apply that to not loading.
Yeah.
And so you just can take the next step, and then all of a sudden it's not that you can't wear a slipper, but maybe if that's your dominant thing all the time, you're going to adapt to it, and you might not even appreciate that may be a root cause for why you're moving differently. And everyone, we're barefoot because that's the best way to be.
It's the truth.
And there is something called island feet. You guys know this to be true. It's not my fault. I didn't make that
Island
up.
feet is something you don't want.
Yeah.
Is that with the slipper?
Yeah, the kids who all grew up poor and barefoot, their arches are amazing, and they have beautiful feet. The kids who wear slippers all the time,
Collapsed arches.
collapsed arches. Yeah, and which is fine. You can go ahead and do that to yourself.
That's so funny.
Boy, I love you. Still love you. Just be careful.
This is the last
Everyone
time.
just turned off this podcast.
That's the last
Like,
time. I was gonna-
yeah, everything
the
after
last
this
time
is just gold.
they're gonna
They're
be on
like,
the
whatever
podcast.
on this
No.
guy.
Oh my god.
You guys, they were just here. They got some books, and so we invited them. But yeah.
Don't hold it against
Don't
these wonderful
hold
people. And I think one of the things that I think is a useful framework for Juliet and I is that there's a lot of information in the world, and you can take a lot of supplements and do a lot of things. But one of the metrics for us is, does this hold true at speed? Does this hold true at speed load? Is this true at high performance? And that can be a lens that helps us make sense, because at low loads and low speeds and low consequence, you don't need to sleep. You can drink alcohol. You can smoke. You can not take care of your body for a while because your body is very tolerant. But when we start to have to make sure that we're in positions of consequence, then the system is a little bit tighter. There's a little bit less tolerance for that. And the same thing I would say is true as we age a little bit. We just have, it's like you can almost equate aging with like a high speed environment, because there's less silliness. Like when you're 17 and you're full of wonderful 17-year-old drugs, your body's just pumping out hormones, and you cut your hand off and it grows back the next day. Right. Thank goodness there's a lot of tolerance.
Yeah.
But then by the time you're 50, you maybe can't get away with that anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't even think 50. I think it's before that.
Trying to be generous here.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah, I
But
think it's before that.
I think it's funny you mentioned that too, though, because what I'm hearing, is that conversation about also, how we as a society, as we noticed, we tend to skip steps, right? We want to skip the basics, if you will, and we jump into the things that look more fabulous on camera or whatnot,
And
right?
fun.
Right? Like we'll gather all the tech, we'll take all the supplements in the world, right? Because they do this for this person, right? And they'll load their supplement intake the same as this particular influencer, right? But yet they have no idea what their background is and why they take it the way that they do, for whatever reason that they do. But without doing your homework, right? And taking that and tuning into yourself and figuring out like, okay, what are the reasons of why I'm taking what I'm taking, or what I'm doing, why I'm doing, they jump into things like, I'm going to point out your guys' book, right? The first book, Supple Leopard, right? It's very niche in the sense of, when it first came out, right? It's CrossFit, right? Everybody was using it. Well, not everybody, but I said that you guys should be using this, right? When this first came out, because it gave essential, I thought essential tools for them, but they looked at me like at that time, because this was a long time ago.
yeah, they're like, I'm not reading
Like
that
this-
book. It's 500 pages
And
long.
it's called Supple Leopard, they don't understand the concepts of,
Supple huli huli.
yeah, what I consider the basics, right? Like you don't have mobility. Like how are you gonna, like create explosion, in these different moments, right? That you're gonna desire them, right?
And then just carry that forward. How are you going to get up off the ground?
That's a
How
huge
are
one.
you? I think, again, it's great that we have a hot minute and to get it right or to get it better, to figure this out. But now Juliet and I feel like we're in this phase we call third wave adaptation. The first wave of fitness was like malt nut power bars and bad heart rate monitors, maybe, right? That's
They're
the
like
first
a
gen.
polar heart rate
That
monitor strap.
polar.
Remember those?
Right,
Yes,
right. And
we used
then
those.
right,
Before.
and then second wave is
Yeah.
where we've come from, which is just insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Where we ask people, and you go on the internet, and I'm like, oh, the goal is to like have abs, and not eat a hamburger bun and drink gluten-free vodka. Okay, I've nailed it, right? Like I am killing it. And that doesn't say anything about how you feel or how you perform. It's about all aesthetics. And strength and conditioning became very decorative, and very, driven by kind of gym culture, and not about performance, not about, hey, what are we training for? Right. And when we now are at a place where we can, I think, simplify a lot and start to ask those questions. Okay, we now know that we have access to really great supplements, right, that are safe and tested. But now we can start to say, which one's for you, and what's the point of this? And so we're in, I think,
Yeah, but I think we're really at the very beginning of this third wave, because we are starting to see more and more people in our space who are sort of falling in the same like trajectory as us, where we're like, okay, it got crazy. People are too confused. like there's now a term, there's like a scientific term called orthosomnia for all of the insanity around people who are like, oh my God, my heart rate variability. And,
Yeah.
they're so stressed about their tracking, and it's the first thing they do when they wake up is check their sleep. And so now it's become a disordered process. And so I do think many of us, and I know we share this, have gotten to this place where it's like, you can't make money doing it. Talking about the basics, like it's not profitable. It's not really that sexy on the internet. But I think for those of us who actually really care about helping people move the needle, it's really now about how do we help people do the things that we all agree that they should be doing, which are the basics. And I think that's where the work is how to help people fit it into busy lives, how to help people prioritize what to do and cast away all the other stupid stuff.
And we have that
and make those decisions. And that's hard. The how is hard. That's where we are.
And we have, because of this second wave, the last 20 years, we have a lot of evidence now that, like, it's unequivocal how much people need to sleep. You, young lady, need to sleep 8 to 10 hours a night minimum, if you're going to grow a body, have a brain that grows. And what we see is that we're not hitting, because of all the things, we don't get some of these basics. Juliet and I, Juliet is a lawyer and CEO of this incredible company. I'm a trained physio, and I'm like, you don't have any fiber in your body. Like, you don't eat fruits and vegetables. How are we supposed to have collagen if you don't have vitamin C on board?
That's correct.
And and people are like, what? Like, that's not in my macros.
We went to this YPO longevity conference, and I sat next to a guy at dinner, and he literally is taking 50 supplements a day.
Whoa.
And no offense, but he did not actually look good.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's
taking the wrong supplements.
Turns out, he's taking the wrong supplements. Turns out he doesn't actually exercise or really go outside, and he has a stressful job. And I do think it's part of, you can go back into all of human history and find examples of, like, it is part of the human condition to want to try to find sort of like the fountain of youth and the quick fix. Like, I do think it's been going on forever and will continue to go on. But we seem to be at like a maxed, like amplified version of it now, where just we feel like people have really lost their way and, just don't need to take 75 supplements a day and then not exercise.
We really, one of the things that I think came out of our experience working with elite coaches is that we saw that they could coach kids and they could coach Olympians and all the way through. And so they could see how things regressed and progressed very well. Because I think that's, if you're listening to this and you're like, I am on it and I'm killing it, I'm doing all these right things, I'm like, okay, are your kids? And you're suddenly, we see as you're like, oh, whoops, not yet. This isn't for my kids. My kids get chicken nuggets and, and mac and cheese, And so, so the idea here is we want to create these through, benchmarks, waypoints, so we can level set, and we really democratize those things. This book, Built to Move, is really a prequel to everything else we did. We're like, because people ask us like, well, okay, what does living look like? And we're like, here's how you can test your lifestyle. And then the second piece is we honestly also wrote this for all the coaches and providers out there, because if someone comes in here, there's a lot we need to cover. And we need to say, hey, we can't do this all in this 1 hour session or this 90-minute session. We need you to go home and start to work on some of these things as a household. And that really, I think, gets us into the next level.
We saw that a lot at our gym, actually. So many of our coaches did all these one-on-one sessions. And as a coach, it's like you have a client coming in and you plan out, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and this with this client. But then the actual client comes in the door and they haven't slept. And, they got back late from a flight and, they played pickleball over the weekend and tweaked their elbow, so they can't do half the movements you were planning on having them do, right? That sort of real person shows up. And then as a coach, part of your job is to be able to, on the fly, adapt and say, okay, the person I thought I was getting isn't the person who came in the door. And so in a way for us, it was like also to try to provide this resource to coaches to say, hey, I can only be with you for one of 23 hours. So like do these other things in the 23 hours in the hopes that when you do come spend your valuable and my valuable time together, we can get the most out of that.
Exactly.
And, that was part of our mission because, we're pro coach, pro practitioner.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, as because that's what we do is we coach our clients, right? Our
Mhm.
customers, our patients. But it's what you were talking about. It's the offloading of
Mm.
all the stuff. Like people don't realize. I think they want to do more, or they want to do the next like fancy
Trend.
thing. Yeah.
That's what it is.
But us telling people it's actually you need to offload some things. Stop. And they're like, wait, how do I? Goes back to the how do I do that, right?
Yeah, what can we cut from your program
Yeah. What
so
can
that
you
you
cut
can
from
be
your
with your
life?
kids
Yeah.
or your partner
And like
or
do fun things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
enjoy going out to
Right.
dinner with your friends and not be weird. And, like whatever that is, whatever brings you joy in your life,
Mhm.
Often it's not. We just had this great scientist, Rachel Projednik, on our podcast, and she just talked about how we've gotten to this phase where everyone is like supposed to live this protocol life
Mhm.
and how problematic that is because that's not how we are as human beings. We're not designed to like wake up every morning with our protocol and,
Yeah.
check off our perfect boxes and run this perfect game. That's not, you
no,
wake
it
up
totally
and your
works
kid
that
has a
way.
cold.
Hold my baby while I go ahead and optimize, baby.
Right.
Does that go? How does that go?
That doesn't work that well.
That's
Especially when
a
you're
quick death, everybody.
yeah,
Don't
it
do
doesn't
that.
work that
Quick
well for
death.
husbands,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Quick death.
Doesn't go that well.
What's the score right now? No, I'm kidding.
I already got the point. So
Yeah, it's over now.
It's over.
Okay. Well, I wanted to get a little into parenting because you did touch upon something, right? Like you asked people, how are you doing? Well, how are your kids doing? Right. Which is something that is totally different. I mean, it can drive you a little mental,
I have
right?
no
As
idea
a
what you're talking
as a
You
parent,
see?
it's like I'm finally learning about my own body, and then it changed,
Mm.
right, from when I started this, and then trying to help them navigate, but then also, one, they're kids, and we're just mom and dad, right? So we might have a better chance of them listening to you, right, than us. So how did you folks navigate? Because you folks are experts, right? So, and your two girls are older.
Well, we're running an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, we always
We'll let
say
you
we're
know.
like
That's
we
constant.
always say like
we
come back
figured
and
that out
talk
too,
to us
yes.
when our kids are 25 because like right now it's going well, but there's lots of ways we could mess it up still. Lots of ways. Yeah, I mean, I would just start saying, and we actually talked about this. I talked about this last night at the talk we did. But one of the, I think, greatest gifts that you can give to your kids as a parent is helping them learn how they find joy in movement.
Mm-hmm.
And creating as much opportunity for them to figure out what that is and making sure that you aren't just pigeonholing them into what you like to do, but saying whatever it is they want to try, whether it's lion dancing or martial arts or dance or whatever, that you really help encourage your kids to move. Because in our family, it was like, it was not a free for all. Our value was like, we move, like movement isn't a choice, but in our family, but how you move is a choice. And there's 1,000 ways to do that because our mission was like, we believe that everybody needs to move, that there's a way that everyone can find joy in movement. And then if you can tap into that as a child, like what a gift, because you send your kids off into the world with this like key skill of liking to move, liking how moving feels, knowing that, if you do it in community and do something with you that you love, you will actually do it. So that was kind of our approach to the movement piece. And it is interesting because we talked about it also last night, but we have one kid who is now a NARP. Have you guys heard this phrase? Non-athletic regular person. She was a competitive athlete.
Just real quick, everyone's going to become a rec athlete eventually.
Yeah, we're all going to become a rec athlete.
You may be elite right now, but you're basically an elite rec athlete. Everyone's sorry.
So she's now a NARP, but she loves to move and loves to train and knows how to eat and sort of has some like basic skills at the ready. And then we have another kid who's going to be a Division I athlete. So we have both we've taken both pathways with our kids, but it was ultimately about, hey, you've got to find a love of moving your body.
Yeah, and let's add that I think you hit at something. It's really difficult to hear from your parents.
Yeah.
We have always said
expert is a mile away.
Expert is someone who lives a mile away, right? So what you can do is model. So if your kids, you come home and your kids watch you slam on the brakes by drinking 2 glasses of wine, and that's how you cope, then they're like, oh, that's how we cope. We come in and we slam the brake and we reach for these self-soothing techniques. If you say our family goes for a walk after dinner, that's what we do. then everyone's going to walk. One of our favorite rules comes from a woman we work with, and Margaret has the 3 vegetable rule for dinner. There's always 3 vegetables. And the child may choose now to eat all 3 vegetables, but there's 3 vegetables for dinner. And so if you constrain certain applications, this is what time we go to bed, this is where the phone lives, because you're not going to rip the phone out of the kid's hands, et cetera. But you have to constrain these things and then appreciate that we're working on a timeline that's freakish. Like it's real hard.
Yeah.
Like, nailed it this week. So good. Yeah. And then it's not about a week. It's about months and months and months and months and months.
And the other thing I would add too, that I think we just stumbled into this. This wasn't intentional, but just because we were part of it. But I do think, more to the modeling thing, but I'm such a fan of having some like form of home gym or way to move at home, because then your kids see, you guys have it so integrated here into your business and life. And I don't know what your home is like, but my guess is there's some stuff going on there from a movement perspective.
We only shower and sleep there. We're here.
Yeah. So
sometimes I sleep in there.
Yeah, like sometimes here, but we just are, like we have toys and ways to move and play and gym equipment, and there's always been just stuff in our house. And so it's not just, we're not the kind of people who just get in the car in our workout clothes and leave. And it's this thing that we're doing that our kids don't see.
Yeah.
They see that it's integrated into our life. And so again, I think that's just another way of modeling our behavior.
And I will say that one of the things this generation of strength coaches, working professionals, you have to be careful that you do not create dysfunction in your family. It's really easy to create disordered eating. We have 2 daughters, and man, you could, there's a phrase that the kids use called almond mom. Have you heard of this before?
No.
Yeah, look there. The idea is that you have a mom who's hyper obsessed, or a parent who's hyper obsessed with seed oils and eating the right thing and clean, and we only eat salads and low carb, and like that mom creates and teaches their children this is how a human works.
Well, that we should like fear food, or that food
that's
is
what
bad,
I'm hearing. I'm hearing the word fear for sure.
We have, toxic is a great word.
Yeah.
And we, because we engage with so many high school kids because of the sports that we're involved with, and collegiate kids, we have to do a lot of unprogramming. We're like, actually, we had a girl recently show up at a water polo tournament, and water polo is pretty amazing, but you can put out 500 or 600 calories easy, and that's my daughter as a goalie who tracks, like she knows what she's putting out. Heart rates are in zone 5, like it's pretty amazing. And this kid had 2 eggs before an event, and then we were swimming again in like 2 hours, and she was like, I'm not really hungry, and so she wasn't going to eat for the next event. And partly is I think she had learned that, hey, I need to control my calories, and mom looks a certain way, and this is what we do, and food isn't realizing that it's a gateway towards performance and safety, right? Because we're like, hey, eat this pound of melon, you'll be fine.
It's a really hard balance to strike, because we're all in this universe where we really do care about what we put in our bodies.
Absolutely.
And we care about food quality. And
when we can.
So when we can't, but it is always like, how do we make sure to not cross a line? Because we have several friends in the health and fitness space whose daughters have developed eating disorders. And of course their parents did not set out to do that, but creating a food environment for kids, it's about fear and scarcity, and certain foods are bad, and it is really difficult on kids. And so we've tried to really like be cool about it.
Yeah.
Like we care about food, we cook, we make sure we have high quality food, and then like we'll have some Trader Joe's Pirates booty in our cupboard, because we want to be kind of normal. We want to be normal.
Starts to set a framework for you where you can think about potentially, okay, where do I have some control with my children? They go off to the house, man, off to the day, they're going to be in the ABC store, eating whatever they want. Like, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Right.
So, or at a friend's house.
That's right. And guess what?
Yeah.
I'm like, you cannot control that. Stop trying to control that.
Yeah.
Right. But what you can control is, this is what we eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And this is what we cook for dinner. And
we're sitting together eating meals, whenever we can. And if you have a kid in sport, you're obviously never going to have dinner as a family, but,
at the table, at least.
At the table. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so what you have to do is say, okay, where are the places where I can leverage this?
Yeah.
And, we send Caroline out, like, so we have a senior in high school who is very competent.
Mm.
But we found out that if I made her breakfast, she could take it to go because she wasn't hungry first thing in the morning. Like I'm gonna force these calories. I mean, we talk all the time. You know, they're like, oh, some of the parents are like, our kids are really struggling to eat breakfast. And I'm like, did you eat breakfast? And they're like, no. And I was like, what'd you think? Where'd your kids learn that? No one's hungry right away. So Caroline would get to school and she would have great protein, some fruit cut up. Like she would chug an emergency before she left, right? She's had her fish oil. Like there's just some things that we would do. And then that allowed her to sleep an extra half hour. And then she could eat that on her own time. And recently she started making protein shakes on her own.
Yeah, Kelly was so pumped, you guys.
Like I'm like, pass the torch.
Well, and then
Protein in a cup, kid. It's the future.
You guys know this, but I think so much of parenting is letting go because we talked about this at the beginning. You have so many ideas about what you do and don't want to do, and situations present themselves, and you're like, well, I never thought I would do X. And one funny thing is when our daughter Caroline was doing her driving class, we can see where she is on Life 360. I don't know if you guys have this and whatever, it's for better or worse. You can see where your kids are. And she got home and I said, what were you guys doing at Chick-fil-A? Like her and her driving instructor were in the drive-thru of Chick-fil-A and the driving instructor was standing there with her. And she said, oh, I take every driving kid immediately through the drive-thru because I know the first thing every kid does when they get their driver's license in Marin is they drive to Chick-fil-A and drive through the drive-thru. Like it's a thing, or In-N-Out. And it doesn't, and I mean, I'm telling you, these are all lots of kids with parents who care about eating good quality food and whatever, but they don't care. They're so excited. They have their independence. And so she's like, and kids crash into the drive-thru. So we've got to have that be part of the skill, learning to drive through the drive-thru, which I had never occurred to me. But I was like, well, I can't argue with this lady who's been teaching kids to drive in Marin for 25 years. Like, she knows what they're going to do when their parents aren't with them. So it's letting go because, I don't want my kid to eat Chick-fil-A, but also, she has to make her own choices at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we had to let go when the kids were super young. I mean, they were given like, oh, here's this colored popcorn, right? Of all kinds of colors.
I remember that.
And our daughter was outside the house with, some friends and she ate it and then puked her brains out for 2 hours. So that was her.
Bless the powers.
Yes.
I'm never going to do that again, huh?
No,
yes.
yeah.
But, and I was just listening to Dr. Shafali this morning. So, you saying the let go, like, oh my goodness, no matter how many times I hear her talk, I'm just like, it's not that. It is. And it's hard because we had a lot of childhood sicknesses, injuries that probably could have been prevented because we were so malnourished.
When we did more research on it, we're like, man, all of this stuff could have been preventable.
Right.
If we were educated, but
and we are now.
Oh, yeah.
We can only control, so much.
What that does is start to say that we don't have to be perfect.
Yes.
But rice and chicken is not the problem. Right? Let's just be real clear about this, right? Like your kids aren't eating too much rice. You know what I mean?
Well, our kids think they are.
Well, you know what's happened finally? Well, we have,
they have
every version of rice and chicken, right?
Yeah, so
chicken
like all Kelly and I want to eat is rice and chicken.
Sorry.
Honestly, like if we were just like when we're about to be empty nesters and like we will probably just eat rice and chicken.
Oh, is this Japanese rice and chicken? Is this Korean rice and chicken? Is this
like rice? Rice
Yeah.
is my carb for life. Like I could drop every other carb in favor of rice. Like I'm a rice person.
Out rice.
And my kids sometimes they eat lunch at school too, and they're like, "Oh, great, we had chicken and rice at school." And now, like, they're apoplectic about the fact that, like, all we want to eat is rice and chicken. So it's not always like, they're over it. They're like, can't we eat, like, pasta?
Nope.
And I was like, not really, because I don't want to.
If you want to cook it.
Yeah.
We're cooking.
So, but yeah, so they're, I don't even know what you were saying, but in our kids' case, rice and chicken is a problem.
Yeah. And, I think when we start to think that there is some tolerance and there's a place to have, incredible ice cream, and we don't have to restrict. One of the things, strategies that we've come up with that's been really good, we borrowed from our friend E.C. Sankowski, who is this incredible nutritionist. And she discovered was she found she was looking to quantify the diets of most people. And how do we quantify nutrition? And she came across a study, 2017, 2018?
I think it was 2017.
That looked at people who ate basically across many countries, lots of different ages, but people who ate 800 grams of fruits and vegetables every day.
800 grams by weight.
By weight. So that could be frozen, that could be fresh, that could, and we're not saying carbs. We're just saying, right? And just so we're clear, everyone, that little loaf of like lemon cake at Starbucks, that's 430 calories. A pound of melon is 230 calories, right? So what she discovered was, hey, we're not actually eating the fruit. We're afraid of the fruit. We're not eating the vegetables. We're buying it. We're not eating it. And that bears out across all the research. So what this gave us was a clear marker where we're like, hey, everyone, we actually need you to eat a lot more food. And people were like, holy moly, like you're asking me to eat like 2 apples today, or a banana and an orange and an apple. And we're like, yeah, welcome to the game. Like this is the big game and you're going to do it again tomorrow. And that did was it opened up. We're like, you don't eat vegetables because you're a paleo bro, like, and vegetables are going to kill you.
Keto.
Yeah, you're keto, like no problem. Like you can do this in berries. You can do this in any way you want. And what's accessible to you. Your family can afford canned green beans. We're playing the game. Beans count, lentils count, white potatoes count. And what we're looking at is trying to get more nutrient dense foods in. And what we discovered was when we really gave people permission to eat a lot more food and cover the space first, there was a lot less room for ultra processed foods. There just wasn't room for that.
They're
And
just eating a lot of actual food.
and if our kids start to cover, remember, we're not getting enough fiber, we're not getting enough micronutrients. So to your point, you're like, wow, there's a lot of things. If our families had said, hey, we have to try to do the best we can. Suddenly what that does is it squeezes out some of that other nonsense noise because there's actually you're full. Right. And we're giving you permission not to fear. Right. Like eat a pound of cherries. I double dog dare you. Like it's a lot. Like you're going to have a cherry disaster later. But that's 200.
It's not a recommended behavior.
230 calories. Like you're in. Like you're worried about 230 calories. But what we see then is that when then we reach for ice cream or a cookie, it's such a small percentage and we've already covered our basis. So it really is this expansive, open way of inviting food back in, right? Like there are no young man on this podcast is going to eat too much ground beef or too much chicken. Like it's yes, you can OD on poke, like maybe twice a day is all you can do. But the idea here is that when we start to cover this and we start to normalize that, then we start to see that, all right, there's a lot more tolerance in the system. But if pizza is your primary calorie source, then it's not very nutrient dense. And now we're going to have a lot of other conversations.
I like that. I like that idea.
Oh yeah. And then they magically discover that inflammation goes down.
Yeah.
You sleep better.
Sleep better. Right. Not moody. And teenagers aren't moody.
And as an adult, I go to your house and I'm going to eat whatever you serve me. But guess what? I'm going to crush all the fruits and vegetables, that crudité, all those salads. Like
that's what I end up doing.
Really it allows you to go out to dinner and actually be a human being.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, like for me, a lot of this is about being less gross for Juliet. I just want to, I'm 52.
That's what it's about.
I'm really worried that Juliet's going to blow me off. And like, this is my shot. And I want to stay less gross.
I get it.
Yeah. Do you, right?
I do.
I know. I'm punching above my weight. I mean, look
what
at
it's
this.
About.
Right?
Right.
Thanks, baby.
You're welcome. Less gross.
Take notes, guys.
Less gross.
Less gross. I'm gross, but I want to be less gross.
The interesting thing too about the 800 grams is that we counsel people. We have this Starretts system program, which is like a strength and conditioning longevity program we run.
Oh, very nice.
And we counsel all our people to eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables. And one of the fears around it is that it's too many calories. And we always have to make sure we point out to people that like 800 grams by weight of fruits and vegetables is probably like 600 calories tops. And assuming most adults should be eating like 2,000 calories a day, it's actually just a small percentage of your overall. You still have tons of room to like, eat rice
and chicken
and whatever else you want to eat. But it is interesting to try to help people shift these like very closely held beliefs around food. I would say more women than men.
Yeah, for sure.
But men also. Even I, like we came from the CrossFit world, and I was like a strict paleo diet follower for a long time. And I don't seriously think I ate like a banana or a piece of fruit for like 4 years. And I look back and I was like, okay, need to be doing
lost opportunity.
That was a lost opportunity.
Right.
And I was also still competing in CrossFit at that point. And so I think I was just extremely underfueled and as
who doesn't want a sweet potato after like a hard workout?
Yeah.
No one does, just by the way. No one wants that.
No one wants to eat that.
Turns out poi is on the menu, baby.
That's right.
One of the things that is amazing about this is that I didn't want to have conversations about body composition. It seemed like every conversation about nutrition was really about conversation about being skinny, right? Or changing my body composition. And I'm like, look, we end up talking about body composition because we work in a lot of sports where there are weight categories and and it's okay, it's reasonable. But can we talk about your tissue health? Because your tissues are falling apart because you don't have any micronutrients or protein.
I'm just laughing at you because you're like trying to get people to care. Like people do care how they look. You're like, no, care about your tissue health.
Look, when the zombies come, I don't want you to die of a tooth abscess. That's a real scare of mine. That's a real fear of mine. Like tooth abscess, zombies.
So that's like the best quote ever. You're like, you shouldn't care about how you look, but you should care about
your tissue health.
I'm like, that's like the nerdiest thing you've ever said.
I don't want you to pull your Achilles. That's what a bummer,
That's very genuine.
That is genuine. Like, how are you gonna run from the zombies, bro?
And oddly specific.
If anyone can relate to your care of tissue health, it's David's.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. So, what's really nice is that we have this like two birds for one stone. It's like finally I can talk about your healing,
right?
And I can talk about your gut, and you're actually getting enough fiber, and now we can really have the conversation, but we can't get to the conversation yet. So that's the point I think of a lot of the work that we're interested in is saying, hey, let's level everyone up and let's bring our families along and our neighbors along and our aunties along. And then we can say, who's got the secret squirrel program? You know what I mean?
Yep. Even though it looks really strange, right? Because we're the first in our family.
Oh, absolutely.
To, I guess, do this, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Not do the things that
we're the first generation.
Yeah.
Of changing, the traditions. I mean, well, I want to say, I guess it is a change. Yeah.
It is. It's a
definite change.
It's a huge change.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
our family.
I mean, what was it? What was nutrition like for you guys as kids? I'm assuming it was quite different from.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Oreos for breakfast.
Yeah.
You had chocolate cake for breakfast, actually.
Yeah. But I mean, the Happy Meals and the Burger King and
we would have vegetables, but everything was canned.
Yeah.
I had no idea that there were fresh vegetables.
I didn't know asparagus was so crunchy because it always came from a can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think you bring this point up is that, I want to give a little grace to our parents.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Because they had zero training.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And they came from a generation that, had legit struggles. I mean, the entire country.
And now we can say, okay, now we know a little bit more, and maybe now we have the means, right? Yeah. You're not chasing down that huli chicken.
Well, I choose to look at it as like we're evolving as a family, right? We're not necessarily changing it.
You know what's interesting though, guys, is my parents I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and they were like early kind of like health food people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the kid who went to school.
What does that mean? Define.
Well, I mean, like in a 70s kind of way, like 70s, 80s kind of way. I think we're a little bit older than you guys, but what that meant was like I would have to have like a wheat bread sandwich with like alfalfa sprouts and vegetables on it, and I would have like an apple, and then I remember dying of envy because Hillary Reynolds was in my class. Her lunch was like she'd have a sandwich or something, but then she would have like chips and Twinkies and I would always call it a full sugar soda. A full sugar soda, which we were not allowed
by
to have.
Herself.
And I remember having the conscious thought, guys, that I was like, it's interesting how our perspectives. Like I had the conscious thought of being like, why do my parents suck?
Yeah.
That they are sending me with this, like compared to all the other kids, my lunch was definitely probably the healthiest, right? And I remember being like so annoyed that my parents,
no one would trade with you.
Yeah, and I couldn't trade. It's like I had no currency in trading. So isn't that right? Like we all have our funny experiences as kids with.
I will say, I just want to protect cereal.
Okay,
cereal is in our family is sacred, but you don't eat it for breakfast. Cereal is something that you eat after practice at home. Like that's dessert is cereal. And I'm not talking about crazy cereal, like not like Nukem sugar bomb cereal. Like it's like, but I will take right out of my childhood of the 70s is that we see cereal as is a way of fueling our kids when they come home. They've eaten an early dinner, they've come home from practice. We can get, sometimes it's really about calories that, and you have to say, well, hey, my daughter processes milk really well. Right, that she just digests milk no problem, and so we're very lucky that she can digest milk and have this little cereal. But you know, not everything was wrong. We just know a little bit more now. And then the real magic is, when do you fit this in so you don't feel like a crazy person? That is everything, right?
Yeah. But going back to, you know, we do what we can and we do our best. So that's
I remember I said to my mom, I was like, Mom, I wasn't even in ballet. Like, did you not even love me? And she literally, like a single working mother. And I was like, I thought you just cared about me, Mom, but I wasn't in ballet. I could have been somebody as an athlete. And she was like, she's kind of weepy. She's like, I was doing the best I could. You know, so we were.
He like actually hurt her feelings.
And I was like, Mom, I'm just kidding. It's just ballet. Like, you know, it would have been really great. But thanks a lot, Mom.
I'm the ballet boy.
Oh.
That would have been great. Imagine if I had ballet.
You know, the one thing I will say, because you asked a long time ago a parenting question, and I don't even know where we went. One thing that has been I know it's a challenge for many parents, although I feel like our kids were the true guinea pigs because they of phones and technology. Because of they you know, like phones and technology really appeared like right when our kids were in middle school, and you know, so much technology. So we sort of feel like our kids were guinea pigs in a way that, like, you know, sometimes it sort of makes me mad. Like we got just sort of, I feel like we were subjected as parents to having to navigate this thing that was brand new. Nobody knew how to navigate. Nobody knew what to do. You know, I remember when, like, Georgia, I think, was in 8th grade, and she was showing me a video on TikTok, and it was like early TikTok, and I actually didn't realize that TikTok was like a social media platform. Like, I hadn't even connected that. And so they weren't.
And you
allowed
were savvy because you were on.
I was savvy. Media. We were already super on social media, and they were not allowed to have. But like, it took me a second to realize, like, wait, this TikTok thing is social media. So just having to navigate that has, I think, been difficult, and also we're on our phones a lot because of the work we do and his work. So I would say for me, that's like the biggest challenge, and sometimes I wish I could rewind, because, you know, we were the strictest parents in our neighborhood about social media because we were on social media for our business. So I think we were able to put in some guardrails that other parents didn't do. And so we were more strict, and we talked to our kids a lot about it and the pitfalls. So I think we did what we could, but I look.
Be honest, what do we do so our kids can get on Instagram? What do they have to do? Well,
I did. In order for my kids to be on Snapchat, I made them make a PowerPoint presentation about why Snapchat is terrible. And they each had to make their own separate PowerPoint. And they were funny. Their PowerPoint presentations were funny.
Why it's terrible.
Why it's terrible.
Got it.
Because I didn't want them to just come and say, oh, well, this is how kids connect and whatever. I wanted them to understand the history of the company and why it was created in the first place. And, like, you know, that nothing really disappears. And I wanted them to kind of understand the mechanics of the platform.
And then what did they have to do?
And they had to sign a social media contract. But I don't know if any of that really matters. So I would just say that the technology piece, and I don't know if you guys are quite there yet, but
no, it's still a challenge.
It's hard. I would say it's the thing that I don't know. Like, I look back and I think, I don't know if we did a good job with that.
And I think if you contextualize it, obviously it's not great. I mean, it's harmful. It's proven, all those things. The other thing is it shapes our kids' desire to go out and play, right? And all of us, especially Gen Xers, are like, we didn't have that as a kid. We played in the street. And we're like, because we didn't have it.
Right.
Like, if you'd had it, you would have used it.
We
and
would have
loved
used
it. Oh my God, right?
Absolutely.
These highly addictive things.
Absolutely.
And so I think what we have to do then is start to shape and think with this also, when kids are spending on average 8 to 12 hours a day on a screen. That's what the research is saying.
Wow.
Because they're at school, they're on laptops, they're on tablets. Suddenly we have to say, okay, maybe sports are more important now. Maybe you need to be in a club. Maybe we have to go, you know, be in an environment where it's a little bit more formal, because we can't just go to the beach and mess around. But hey, now some of these cultural institutions that we thought of as nice to have, like hula and, you know, traditional dance, maybe that's even more important now, because there are places where kids can move and interact and be social and learn how to be.
I mean, I think it does suck, because we do now, I think, as parents, have to be intentional about creating space where our kids aren't interacting with technology. I don't think as a parent you can now just like hope for the best. You can't like hope can't be a plan here. Like you really do have to get your kids in the outdoors. You have to get them involved in activity. I mean, I think honestly, like there's so many great things about sports, but for our kids, like one of the best things about it is, they go to water polo practice for 2.5 hours every afternoon. Like no one's on their phones.
Yeah.
Like that alone, forget about the water polo part and all the skills you learn in sports, like just being off their phones for a couple of, 2.5 hours is amazing. So I think that I feel like for your kids, they're starting to be like parents are becoming more aware.
Even kids.
And I think they're starting to be more, joint, like, because it's hard to be the only parent who does something. You don't want to be the only parent whose kid can't have a phone, or the only parent. But I think there's more and more parents now who are like, no. Like we're all not doing that. It's terrible. Yeah. It's complicated.
Well, and as you say that, I'm like wondering, where is our son?
Right?
Doing TikTok dance. It's fun.
It's most likely on technology.
Going viral.
Somewhere in the building.
Oh my God. Well, we touched briefly upon, your books and all the resources that you provide to everybody. Are you working on anything else?
Well, let me hear the pitch deck go.
Okay, so we are on this. We're just going to stick with this kid thing, but we're working on another book called Outplay.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is that parents of kids who are in sports have effectively become the human performance director of their household, but they have no qualifications. So we want to try to give them the qualifications. And the goal is twofold. I mean, threefold, three goals. But one of them is that the data shows that kids are dropping out of sports at like 70% dropout by age 13 or 14. And so one of the goals is to help families create an environment where kids don't as quickly get burnt out and can just experience the joy of sport and movement more and stay in sports for longer. So that's one of the goals. One of the other goals is there are parents and kids who have aspirations of moving on and trying to play at the college level or stay in sports or be, more elite. And what are the habits and practices that will help you as a family get to there? What's the third one?
The third goal is that we see that this is sports are a wonderful framework to teach us how to be physical humans in our environment. How do we enjoy moving? How do we?
But not even just physical. Like, how do you negotiate failure?
That's right.
How do you?
How can we use that as a really great template? Because theoretically, anyone who's ever done a sport and puts their kids in sports is like, yeah, sports are good for us. But we just want to be way more meta and intentional about actually getting those things out, so we don't break as many eggs and we don't, create a lot of suffering and misery. And honestly, I mean, sports and here on the island. Probably all the islands, like there is a pressure to specialize early. Kids are, playing baseball year round because of the weather at age 11. They don't have, right? And sometimes we don't even see the potential that like surfing is physical activity. Well, you're like, it's sport, but hey, how do you want to move your body? How are we going to solve this? And how do we untangle this problem so that sports can actually fulfill its promise? Because it's not really meeting its needs.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said, right? Just learning to lose too, which I feel like that has become, generational as the generations go along. That kind of has been left out.
Yeah, and learning how to receive feedback. I mean that goes so far in life. You need to be able to receive feedback in a job, and so there's so many life lessons that are built into sports. That you really can't, it's hard to teach as a parent. So it's like another great way to sort of like help outsource some of parenting. But if kids drop out by 13 because they're burnt out or, then we haven't done it. So hopefully it can sort of meet all those goals. So we're working on it.
Well, that's awesome.
To come out in 2027.
We're looking forward to that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's really a blank space out there. There's not really a good roadmap and template because, Julie and I are end of the day, we're just two parents in the stands, and the questions we get, we're like, oh, this is a book. You know what I mean? Like people don't know how to feel between games. They don't, their kids haven't slept. They're, should my kids take creatine? And we're like, your kid is a psychological mess. Like, she makes a mistake and looks at the stands because you're shouting at them. So how do we make that better?
Yeah.
And it turns out if we give people better tools, they tend to make better decisions theoretically. That's the model.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
What about you guys? I know this is your podcast, but what are you guys looking forward to?
More training. Yeah. Pivoting towards, doing less facials in the room and towards training.
Yeah. We find ourselves in this position of education, like we're learning so many things from, so many different avenues. What do we do with it? Right. We put it into practice every day with our clients.
Yeah.
But it becomes more meaningful when you're sharing the information around the world like you folks are. I mean, New York Times bestseller, guys.
It's a thing.
Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you get lucky. It is a long game.
Yeah.
And I love that you can continue to get better. And, like we talk about growth mindset, we throw that around, but what does that really look like?
Yeah. And, it's, obviously because we've written these books, we've been able to have a bigger impact, but I think it's equally as important what you guys do here on a local level and in your podcast and with your clients in just helping people feel better and, have tools and tactics to live better and feel better in their bodies. And to me, that's an equal impact.
People need coaching.
Maybe even more important because
sure.
you guys
are a community.
Yeah, it's community, and you guys are connected to your community, and
that's part of the basics. I would consider.
Yeah, community is huge.
Yeah, we last night we had an amazing turnout. It was very cool, and there were so many aunties and uncles out there. It was like really, and I asked a question like, how many people have an auntie over 90 here? And like a lot of hands went up. Like there's a lot of old people around.
Yeah.
And what do we ask her? Like, how keto was your grandma or your auntie? Like,
I was like, did she do Orange Theory
or Soul Cycle? Like, which high intensity which supplements? How much creatine did she load? And what you see is you're like, oh, maybe we're really missing the important part. Like, what is it about her? Well, she had good genetics, but she was also deeply entrenched in her community, walked everywhere, cooked everything, right? Got sunshine, slept a lot. Yeah. And suddenly you're like, oh, okay, maybe all this is.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. Sometimes I always go back to you guys have heard of the Harvard study on human development, which is like the longest study ever done. And it's like the number one thing that predicts your longevity is your community and your friends and your connections with other humans. And all these other things that we all talk about a lot are great and important, but always secondary to this community piece, which you guys do such an amazing job of building around people.
I'm sure there are.
Thank you.
And with your music too.
Yeah,
oh, thank you.
And I'm sure that there are structural and institutional level problems around poverty and food scarcity here on the islands, right? There's
For sure.
plenty of that. But if we could remedy that, what we would probably see is deeply connected people who were happier and lived longer than their counterpoints on the continent because of the connection, because you're seen, because you have family, because we have tradition. So there's something here. If we remember that, I think this island becomes, or these islands become, the most important blue zones in the world.
Well, yeah, we can sit here and talk to you folks.
Oh my gosh, no, for a long time,
forever.
Well, Juliet is really funny.
This is also the first time. I will say it's been a little distracting to have an adorable baby.
I know, and this is.
I appreciate you.
I know.
It's so cute. I'm like, I've been a few times like, that's so cute.
And I'm not gonna lie, like that's I'm listening to what you're saying, but I am very much I'm in mom mode. This is our first podcast since she's been born.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
we're so delighted.
Welcome to the club, kid.
Congratulations. Yeah, first of many. First of many.
You didn't grow up in a podcast studio? Sorry for you. Your parents sucked.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're evolving. Yeah.
But one of the most common questions that we always ask all of our guests, right, is obviously connected to the name of our podcast, which is Optimize Your Now, right? And so if you folks don't know what now is, right? Now can literally translate as to what's, the things that are in your body. In other words, like the guts and whatnot, right? But really, when we're talking about now, we have many, many different meanings to what that word specifically means. A lot of things that are inside of you that are not as tangible, right? Our feelings, our emotions, our connections to, our ancestors, our connections to each other, right? The things that where life starts, in other words, right? Life begins. What do you folks do to optimize your now?
I think for me, it's all about this connection piece. But at the core of that, I think we both share it's our family. So obviously, we're very connected to our community and beyond. But we really have always, from a business perspective and a family perspective, kind of tried to run all these decisions through like, what is the best decision for our sort of mini community, which is our family. And I think if we're in alignment with that, then we feel like we know we've made the right decision if we're in alignment with what's right for our sort of immediate family, and then, stretching out to our community from there.
Yeah.
I don't know
What
that.
about you?
No.
Yeah.
That's why we get along.
We see you.
Yes, we see you. We hear you. Well, this has been an amazing conversation with both Kelly and Juliet, and we encourage you to look up their books. It's full of so many resources. You don't have to read it, I didn't read it from end to end. It's more
No.
like a reference, like, looking up.
Because you and I are the same. My maniac wife would read it start to finish, but I would just skip around and be like, "This is what I need right now."
Yes. And so you could read it from front to back, and you could also reference it. But you folks do also have a podcast as well that people can tune
called
into.
The Ready State.
Okay, awesome. And what is the best way for people to connect with you?
We're at thereadystate.com on the internet, and our podcast is at it's The Ready State wherever people listen to their podcasts.
Okay, awesome. And we're going to have all of these on the show notes as well. So if anybody wants to connect or look up and learn more about their amazing mission to help parents and people in general with bodies and minds and souls.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in another life, I was born on this island, so we'll be coming back.
There we go.
Awesome.
We're both paddlers and love to paddle, and this place is just always very, very special.
We must have you guys on again then.
Yeah.
Deal.
Yeah.
Sold.
Yes. So if you see him walking around with no slippers,
That's right.
no flip-flops, just barefoot,
I'm that guy.
Eating rice and chicken.
yes,
That's right.
eating rice and chicken.
That's what
Yeah.
we'll be eating.
Or poke. Yeah. Send your aloha. Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Thank
of
you
course.
so much.
And hopefully we'll see you here again soon.
You
Yeah.
know it.
Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.